Hello, friends. Today we're going to talk about indecision. We all deal with this to some degree. We're not talking about the tendency to be chronically indecisive. We can be decisive in certain areas of our life, like at work, we can be very decisive. And in other areas, when it comes to our relationships, let's say, we might experience more indecision. And we all face periods where we're faced with decisions that we perceive as bigger decisions, and it becomes hard to get clarity. So, today we're going to be talking about this and what the path to clarity is when we're faced with these moments where we just feel stuck on something and we don't feel like we're getting anywhere. Mitra, to start off, let's establish the premise that we are operating on. And we talked about this just before the episode, but the premise is that clarity is always there. We actually know what is the best decision for us. The problem is that a lot of dust is kicked up through our own inner conflicts that make the decision unclear. So, is there anything you'd like to clarify further on that, on the premise that we're talking about?
Well, I think that's the first step for making decision to separate and identify the clarity from noise, because sometimes noise covers it and pretends that it's clarity. And then we think, oh, no, I know I've got clarity, but it's not truly clarity. It is the noise covering the clarity and basically pretending that it's clarity. So that's I think, first and most important step to when we are not very clear about our decisions. And as you said, we have unclarity, we have lack of clarity in different areas. And I call it decision bottlenecks. We all have it, but you know, sometimes in this area and sometimes in that area. As you said, I mean, I've known people that have made multi-billion-dollar decisions easily, but got stuck on something very small, buying a gadget. They get stuck on that, and they can't make a decision. So, yeah, separation and identification of which one is noise and which one is actual clarity. And we're going to talk about this more. Even when we've made the decision, so-called the final decision, we need to check that and make sure that it is truly clarity.
So, Mitra, before we get into this, let's frame a example of what someone might be going through that they have a lot of difficulty making a decision on.
Well, I can think of a, a decision that somebody was making and asked for assistance from me. And the decision was they are financially successful, but they want to do something that is meaningful to them. So they wanted to enter a different arena of work or investment or business. And I thought, uh, yeah, that's a good example. Let's go there with that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's walk through this process now. Okay, can you just give us a high level summary of what process you follow when there isn't clarity?
Mhm. The process that I follow, and I usually guide others who ask me for assistance, is that first, exactly what we talked about. Let's separate clarity from noise. That's the first step. The second step is because when we're making a decision, our mind gets activated and it has a great role, but it needs to be a defined role, a role that is clear and it has a frame around it because mind can go forever. As you know, we can overthink things. So hiring the mind and tasking it with fact gathering with a complete framework. Bring me information about this. Either the time frame can be a time actually, by tomorrow morning at 10 I want to have whatever we have is good. Or you can say, like, bring me information about 10 potential businesses that I can explore. So give it some framework and also give it a very clear task. Gather facts for me. So that's number two. Number three is now we want to make sure that there is alignment. And now we can hire the heart. Can you check and see if there is alignment? So really what we're doing is we're bringing balance and collaboration of the mind and the heart in this
So
process.
you're saying alignment that we feel in the body, that there is a
Exactly.
resonance that we feel in the
Yes.
body.
And it's mainly in the heart as the body, because body has also work to do, but this is heart. So how do you feel, not sense? Sensations are the work of the body mainly. So how do you feel when I say this? And I'm going to take you through an actual example of what we did in this particular case. So one was clarify, separate the noise from the actual clarity. Two was hire the mind and give it a specific task of fact gathering where a very clear frame. And three is ask your heart, is there alignment? How do you feel when I say, let's say we're making a decision to go with this business or working together? How do you feel when I say, Ben and I are going to be working on this? So that's the work of the heart. And then you just give the whole package. Now we're bringing in the body, mind, heart. Now we're bringing it to body and ask body. Body is the best truth teller of all. Body never lies. There is no way of not really sensing things in your body when it's not aligned, when it's not working for you, when you don't like it. You may not communicate it. I cannot stop it from you seeing it, but I am actually sensing it in my body. So check with your body, the ultimate truth teller, and see how it all goes. This is very important because we usually are rushed in our decision making. And then the next number, which I think it's number 5, is to give it a pause. That's why the old saying, wise saying of sleep on it. And that's why the sales people don't want you to sleep on it. And they say, if you take it now, we're going to give you a great discount. If you come back tomorrow, the price won't be there, because they know the pause usually may bring a different kind of decision. So we went through 5 things, and now we're going to bookend it with checking for clarity. Now, if everything has gone well, I'll ask you, can you tell me about your decision in a very simple one sentence? And if you can't do that, you need to repeat the whole process again, because you weren't able to really get to a clear decision. So we start with clarity. We end with checking clarity by saying, can you just tell me about your decision and tell me whatever you want to tell me? Can you do that effortlessly? Can you do that simply? Or are you going to get stuck and say, it's hard to say, Mitra. Yeah, maybe it's not like when you do that, that means you haven't really arrived at a clear decision. And perhaps one of these steps, or all of them, need to be worked out again.
Okay. So this is a great framework. I love this framework. It resonates with my own experience and what has worked for me in the past. So now let's break each one of these steps down. And I think the first is the most important step, which is distinguishing clarity from noise and also understanding what is the source of the noise, right? Because we have sometimes conflicting
Yes,
values, right? Our values conflict with
yes,
what we know to be right for us, or those values can be influenced by other people. So being able to shine the light on that and being able to understand not only what is noise and what is clarity, but where is this noise coming from, and getting clarity on that as well. So to go to the example that you brought up, which was someone who's at a pivotal point in their vocational career, uh, they have a choice to either continue down the path that they have been, or to make a leap into something new, and they're feeling indecisive about what to do. There's a lot of conflict within them about this. So can you share what are some of the things that are going through this person's mind? What are common sources of noise in this scenario?
So the conversation started by, of course, them telling me that they would like to make this decision. Can we talk about it and work on it? And I said yes. So I said, "What? Tell me about what it is." And they said that, we're successful financially, so it's not about money, but I'm thinking of doing something on my own so that I can feel that I have created something, because this was in a group setting and in a family and sort of syndicated way, so they didn't feel that this was their baby, whatever they were working on. So I said, okay. And they said, I know what I want to do, but I just want to see what you think. I said, okay, what do you want to do? And they said, um, well, there's something. I realized there was a sort of a doubt because they didn't go on saying, this is what I want to do. I said, okay, so apparently there are options there. It was very interesting. It was like putting two, it was, yes, there are options. I said, okay, tell me about the options. They said, okay, let me tell you the first option that is not probably that solid. I said, okay, tell me. And they were talking about something completely creative that they had to do from the beginning. And I'm looking at them, and if, like, we have a Zoom meeting. I'm looking at their face. They come to life and they say, yes. And then I do this, and they have to do it from scratch. Of course, there's a lot of work. Then I do this, and then I have to hire this person. And I like, everything is like moving. Okay. I say, okay, so that's the bad idea, right? They said, yes. And then I said, tell me about the good idea. The good idea is an established idea that a friend of mine has done, and it's like very profitable, and I can triple my money in the first 6 months and like a quarter, like just, all these numbers. So, okay, tell me about it. And the face immediately drops. And I said, okay. They said, yeah, it's a very complicated formula that, to be honest with you, Ben, I did not even comprehend that you get in when people need money and you give them money and then you triple your money if I can't give it. I mean, the energy of it was like the whole body, my body and theirs was like contracting, and nothing was happening. And I said, okay, so this is the one that you think it's better. And they said, yes, because this is the one that is 100%. I said, okay. Um, I went to number 3 immediately. And I said, can you tell me how you feeling right now? And they said, well, to be honest with you, a little bit tired. I said, why? You were full of excitement about a second ago. What do you think happened? And they said, but I said, no, no, don't answer. Just pause and tell me, what was the difference between this and what you said? They said, oh, you think I said, no, 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 I've got nothing. I'm none of my business. It's all yours. It's not my time, my life, my money. You tell me how you feel. And then when they dropped into their heart and body, they said that they felt contracted and their body felt tense when they were talking about the second idea, which was sure for money. So mind was saying, this is great idea because you can definitely triple your money in such a short period of time. But the other one was more aligned and their body was relaxing and their heart was feeling right. But their mind hadn't figured out the facts. They hadn't done the research. So it was very interesting how you go through this sort of steps, and sometimes you need to skip one and go back to it. And I said, so you thought you had clarity from the beginning? They said, I did before I started talking to you. I said, but then the clarity, was that yours? Or was that of your friend who had advised you, this is a great idea, come and do this, whatever the money thing was, with me? And they said, well, okay, maybe it wasn't my clarity. He said, so where do I go? Where do I go from this? I said, I think you don't have enough facts about the first option that excited both your body and calmed your body and excited your mind and heart. Why don't you go and bring facts? See, do your research, whatever you want to do, but give it a time frame. You have only 1 week to do that, and bring back whatever you find out, and we'll talk about it again and see how it goes. Because there was so much difference, and I didn't want to say too much because this is a very personal decision and I don't want to be an influencer. I want to be a servant, basically, a person at the service of another person arriving at their own better decision. So that was just so, and it was very fresh because it was only about 2 months ago that this happened. And I watched them very closely, zoomed in, literally. And and I could just see the difference between these two. One is that mind is sure, and mind, where did they get the information from? The clarity really was from somebody else. And maybe it was their clarity. Maybe the friend thought and that's fine too, because it's not my business. But this clarity was not theirs. It wasn't their clarity. It was a noise around them. It's like if I call you every day and say, Ben, do this and do that. This is so great. Come. And we all have friends like that for, like, loving reasons. They do that. Like, come, come and invest here and come and do that. And let's do this together. And then you can't distinguish between what is your clarity and what is the noise that I have created around you. So this was a very long example, but I wanted to take you through the journey of decision making. But I want to stop and ask our interview friends and see, do you relate to any of these steps or stages or even indecision that you may have experienced? So it's a very interesting human experience. Ben, tell me what's going on with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. You had said in the example that the clarity that he thought he had was from his friend. And I want to go into that a little bit more because I think it's easy for our mind to say that. But really, what's happening is we also have things that we value that can be in conflict with what our clarity is saying, right? For example, certainty. Having certainty is something that a lot of us, the mind, the ego values. And the option that is opens up the possibility for uncertainty can create a lot of fear. And then our mind can come up with all sorts of reasons why that decision is a bad idea. But the key thing is to recognize that there is a desire for certainty and to really question that. So, how does one who is really conflicted, one part of them is saying, go with this idea that is more uncertain, the outcomes are more difficult to measure versus a path that is more certain without abandoning themselves, right? Without making a decision that's split. So how do they do this? How do they shine the light in this so that they can have confidence and conviction that actually the uncertain path, it might not be as uncertain as I thought, but also uncertainty is not as scary as it might seem. How would you guide someone through that?
Certainty is an illusion because certainty can only arrive if all elements of life stay constant and not change. Since life is changing constantly, the only constant that there is in life is that everything is changing, then certainty is a complete illusion. So the first thing is to understand that. Because when I say I want guaranteed, outcome, then I'm not understanding life. That's number one. Number two, certainty is the element that only mind experience because heart is open and accepting. So that's when we feed the mind the facts that are satisfying enough. You see, it's not fully satisfying. Mind is like always probably ready to object. And we're talking about rational thinking mind, of course, not the larger aspect of our mind. Then it's really taking charge. It's understanding and making mind understand that the aware me, is in charge of decision making. Because when I am listening to my mind, it means that I have given up my power as by I mean the aware me, the conscious me, has given up power to be in charge. So I tell the mind, I have enough facts, I have enough information, and based on that, I'm making a decision. So you don't ask the mind, you tell the mind. It's really taking full leadership as a conscious being. And now we're going to a deeper aspect of humanhood that I am in charge. Is it guaranteed that this will happen? No, because I understand as a conscious person that nothing is guaranteed. Remember all the things that we were planning to do and then COVID happened, you know? So it's like understanding the nature of life, understanding who is the decision maker, because sometimes we confuse it. We think it's the frightened mind that needs to make the decision. And then from there, it becomes much easier to go through these steps and engage the mind, but not fully surrender to the mind.
I like that perspective. And something else that has helped me as well is actually going through the scenarios of, well, what's the worst that can happen? Because maybe the uncertainty is not as scary as our mind is making it out to be.
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes I've noticed where I just assume that the uncertainty is going to be a bad thing. But when I pause to actually think about what are the things that can go wrong, that if I made that decision and I kind of play through in my mind, how bad would that be? It provides a lot of clarity. And it makes me realize, hold on, maybe it's not as scary as I thought it was.
I like that.
Yeah.
So
And not only
imagining the
that,
worst case scenario and then working through that and saying, I can handle that.
yeah, and then not only that, but also for what has helped for me is also thinking about what are the benefits of that, right? So
Oh,
what are the benefits? So let's say that worst case scenario does play out. Sure, it'll be uncomfortable, it'll be difficult, but what are the benefits that could come of that? For example, I will have learned something new about myself. I will have exercised my courage muscle. I will have been able to build certain new relationships and expand my network, whatever they might be. But there's always going to be benefits too. And it's been helpful for me to shine the light on those benefits. And it really helps tone down the voice of fear in my mind.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, the person is going through this process. They're now starting to distill what is clarity from what is noise.
Hmm.
And what is the key understanding that this person needs to come to at this stage before they move on to the next step, which is the gathering of the facts?
Yeah. I think it's just asking that question is sufficient at this stage because remember, we have a checking mechanism at the end. So don't go for perfectionism. This is where people might get actually stuck, that I want to make sure that it's like everything is extremely gentle, because this severe approach to decision making is what makes it so difficult, especially if it's an area that we have, blockage. So make it gentle, make it soft, let it be fluid. So I've done my best. This is as close as I get to clarity. Good. Let me start the process. I will check with it, at the end. So just moving it forward, because sometimes it is a little bit of an obsessive kind of
Mm-hmm.
behavior
Yep.
stops us from making comfortable, easy, and true decisions. So is it good enough? I usually ask because I will check. I'm not going to go and do the thing yet. Is it good enough? Yeah, let me start the process. And in the process, a lot of light is going to be shed on this clarity that we have assumed our decision on. There is a checking mechanism. Don't worry. Is it good enough of clarity? Yeah. And the most important question is it mine? Because most of the time it's not even ours. I
Mm-hmm.
have gotten this, I call it borrowed clarity, borrowed decisions, that it came from the society and the community and the family and all the pressure of the institutions that I thought I should be that way. And then I always say, says who?
Mm-hmm.
Says who? People say, they say. You've heard people say, they say we shouldn't. I say, I'm sorry, says who? They. Who are these they? I want to know who are these invisible bays that are always butting their nose in our business. Who is they? They say, don't do this. They say, when you do this, that happens. So like, let them come and meet with me. I want to meet them. Who are they? So yeah, these are basically precious moments that we can shed some light and make more conscious decisions. And if it's not the perfect decision, If I always say if I was perfect, I wouldn't probably have a physical body and live on earth. And that's okay. I'm learning. I'm in the University of Life. So, ah,
Yeah, I love that. I love that, approaching it lightly and just having enough, clarity on that step, clarity versus noise before you move on to the next one. And if you don't get it right, that's okay. You can go through the process again. And anyways, at the end, there's a checking mechanism, a double checking mechanism.
exactly.
Okay,
And
I
start
love that.
practicing with the smaller decisions.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful way. I invite our interview friends to start on something small, what food or to order and what top to buy, like something smaller that it's not consequential in their life. And then once you start practicing and become more savvy in your own way of making decision, then you can go for more important decisions in your life.
Okay. So the next step, gathering facts within a specific framework. Okay, what do you mean by that?
I mean, you know how you go, especially online, and you start in Los Angeles and you end up in Timbuktu. Don't do that. Make sure that there is a frame around that and focus around that. So you double F it, and then it becomes much easier to do it.
So how do you do that? In the example that you shared, uh, w- with this individual who was making a vocational decision, how would you have guided him to gather facts within a framework?
So what I told them was basically to very specifically one part of this decision, but this plan, this other option. Let's say it was, I don't know, starting a gallery, art gallery. Let's say it's that. It wasn't that, but let's say it's that. So instead of going for the whole market, I tasked them with find out how many galleries there are and which areas there is a demand for gallery, for instance, and really just limited to the areas that it's easy for you to drive to. Okay. So they will be bringing very specific information because they wanted to be hands on about gallery locations close to where they live. You see how frame it helps to sort of work with it. So it's not just gallery in general, it's the gallery location. And where is the location? Location. And we determined, let's say, 5 miles because of the traffic in the city, 5 miles to the gallery. Okay. Now it's very easy to bring specific information. And mind has a very clear task and it has a very clear frame and it can actually produce good results. And more importantly, it can be satisfied that it has a say. So we don't need to constantly discipline the undisciplined mind in this state of decision making, which usually is the reason for indecision.
Yeah, yeah, and the key trap here, and it's the reason for the framework, is getting into analysis paralysis, which I've had the habit of doing in my past. Um, and it's very easy to get obsessed with the facts and collect many facts. So you shared the framework of narrowing it to the specific options that one is considering and not broadening it at this phase. I'd like to add as well some helpful ones is to, before at the outset, make a list of questions that you want to have answered. What are the key questions that I want to have answered through this process? That adds an additional frame. And the commitment I like to make to myself is, okay, when I get answers to all these questions, I'm going to pause and I'm going to check in before I dig in a little bit deeper. Do I have enough information now with answers to all these questions to move on? Sometimes the answers open up new questions and they're legitimate, valid new questions, and I continue to go on. The other helpful framework that I've used is setting a timeline for myself. For example, I'll give myself 3 days to evaluate the opportunities, or 1 week, depending on what the decision is. But giving myself a timeline is really helpful. And recognizing, as you said before, we're approaching this with curiosity, and the key is to keep the energy moving forward. And if we need to move backwards again, that's okay. Well, we'll move back and when we do it. Gathering facts. So the person has gathered the facts. So is there anything that the person should check before they move on to the next step?
No, is it good enough?
Is it
Good
good enough?
enough facts. Good enough. Go for good enough, not perfect. Good enough is just perfect motto for me. So good enough. And now we take these good enough facts and run it by the heart. And what are we looking for? We're looking for a sense of alignment, meaning, does your heart expand when you think about these, or does it contract? So that's the alignment, the language of the heart for alignment. It contracts or it expands. And that's very simple, as heart is very simple, as you know. So you just ask it and see what happens. And then you put these two together, the facts and the alignment. Let's say yes. Oh, let's talk about that. What if mind says yes, the facts that it has gathered indicates yes, and heart says no, there is no alignment. For that, my suggestion is that you wait, give it some time. But what if the heart says yes, but the mind says no? For that, you gather more facts and more information. And
Interesting.
that's when you do it. And then you take these two, once they somehow are saying the same thing, to the body, and just ask yourself, how do I, what do I sense? How do I feel in my body when I consider this? Where does my body go? And your body really, really is good at that, especially when you ask it so directly. And your body is another way of checking and seeing what it is. To me, that is very helpful. And sometimes I don't get an answer, probably because my body is so tired that it's like, this is not a good time. But even if it is a good time, I prefer always to give it some time. Again, sleep over on it for the night and get up and see, is it still as important, as urgent, as good, as bad, as whatever it is that it felt the day before, and allow your body to tell you again what's going on in it, because that pause is a very important part of it.
So I love how you distinguish between when the mind says yes and the heart says no, and when the heart says yes and the mind says no. That's really helpful. Just having that alone, it helps distill the process. So when the mind does say yes and the heart says no, and the mind gets frustrated, like, what do you mean no? No, that's bullshit. No, no, but that doesn't make sense. Yeah, but, and so now there's this inner conflict again. What is this step? What is the step that they take now? I have some thoughts on this, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I don't know. I'm so parental. The here is when the taking charge is very important. That the conscious person steps in and says, sorry that you don't like it, but that's the decision. Because when you are flexible with the thinking, rational mind, it loves to take charge. And it is very important for a conscious life and a conscious decision making process to be clear about who the decision maker is. You see, this is very important because my role, let's say you're making a decision and I'm helping you. Okay. That's what the role of the mind is. It's so important for me to remember that this is your decision. I'm here to give you feedback or facts or whatever it is. But if it's my decision and you're helping me, the decision maker is me, completely changes the dynamic. So we need to identify the roles here before we go to the process of decision making. I am not allowing my rational mind or even my beautiful heart to make the total decision, because there are things, there are dangers, there are facts that my frightened mind knows that is helpful. My heart says, yes, hug everybody and give them everything. That's what my heart says. My mind says, this is a very dangerous place and I want you to leave now. Your life is in danger. So which one do I listen to, and who's making a decision? I am the aware, conscious me. So this is when I will tell the mind, thank you for your opinion. I have made a decision.
I can see and that has worked well for me in certain times, and there are other times when there's just too much buy-in from the mind. You know, I think about it as my center, right? Where am I anchored? Uh, if I'm anchored more in my mind than I am in my wise self, then making a decision like that is doesn't work for me because then end up being split. When I'm feeling more anchored in my wise self and I experience the mind more as noise, like I actually have that experience, there's a detachment from the mind. Following the path that you just suggested is the way to go for me, is just to make the decision. So if
Tell
I'm
us about your
so if
process
I'm
then.
too entangled with the mind though, what do I do?
You
Well,
had something to say. What do you
yeah,
do?
yeah, what do I do? So I ask questions to the mind. I step into curiosity. I was like, okay, tell me more about what is wrong with the decision that the heart is saying is right for me. And oftentimes it's related to something about certainty. And I ask myself, my wanting certainty, having certainty. Yeah, because that path is more uncertain and there's risks associated with it. And then I ask myself, but is the certainty really what I want? Is the certainty going to give me happiness? Is that path, is it going to inspire me? And then the other thing is we're talking about the language, feeling into the language of the heart, which is through this through feeling. I ask myself, is the decision my mind making fear or is it love? And it's always fear. When it's in conflict with the heart, it's always fear. And when I have that clarity, I ask myself, well, do I want to be led by fear or by love? And as I ask these questions, my anchor comes more back into my wise self, my heart centered self. And then I reach a point where I feel distant enough from the noise of the mind and I'm able to make a decision.
No. Very wise. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The intuitive intelligence comes, we get to clarity, okay, on that, but it's not final yet, right? You suggested that we sleep on it. So, what do you mean by sleep on it? Sleep on it for one night? Literally
Well,
sleep
not
on it for one
literally,
night?
but
What do you mean by
pausing.
sleep
It
on it?
depends on the decision, of course. And sometimes the sleep on it, maybe just leaving the room and going to the bathroom and come back
Hmm.
because we don't have that opportunity. There's like some kind of urgency, or I have to opine, or I have to give my vote. So it's not always I say, I'll see you tomorrow. By that, I mean creating a pause. And that pause, the duration of the pause, really depends on the situation. Sometimes I can take a week. Sometimes I can take a night. And sometimes I really can't. And I'm really for creating pause no matter why and how. I ask for a break. Or if I can't do that, I excuse myself and go out where I can gather myself, because it's a very interesting word we use, because we spread ourselves usually in a gathering and where there's other people. So I gather myself and check and see which one needs to be questioned again. Do I have enough facts? Have I, checked with my heart? How does it feel in my body? I just go between these, and there's no really order that is right or wrong, but you know where you are not very clear, and giving yourself time. And that pause could be a breath, could be just coming out of the room. It could be a night, could be a week, could be the fact that sometimes usually the rational mind, the frightened mind is rushing me for no reason, or it's the external rush. As I said, there's a sales pitch happening that they are imposing on me that I have to make a decision. And no, I don't. Sometimes I ask myself, do I really? No, 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 I have to. Do I have to? Question that. Do I really have to? And if it's really truly urgent, and I'm sure like some of our interview friends are saying, yes, Mitra, I was in the situation that this, okay, then create a pause. Close your eyes. Can you take 3 breaths before answering and deciding? Do that. Whatever pause you can afford, do that, and see if you come out of this decision making process. Can you put it in a very simple and comfortable, and I'm not talking about vocabulary comfortable, I'm talking about energetically comfortable. Can I come and tell you, Ben, I decided to go to this business because blah, 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 and it feels really aligned for me, and feel good about that. If I don't, either I can't put it in words, comfortable words, simple words, or I don't feel right about saying it, then maybe I need to revisit one or all the parts that we went through.
So sleep on it. I actually heard you say two things with as it relates to sleep on it. One was in a rush scenario, and two was when we have more time. In a rush scenario, it's kind of we're going to put that aside for a moment. For me, the key is sleep on it is to not think about it at all. To spend a period of time where I literally just turn off thinking about it completely. It could be a day, it could be, usually a day is sufficient. If time is constricting, then, an hour, a couple hours, take a walk in nature, or if you don't, just take a walk around the block, get some sunshine, do something totally unrelated to it. I like music, as you know, but totally pausing it for a moment and then coming back to it, and then asking the question again, rechecking, does this feel good? Yes. And then the check of, okay, can I say this with clarity in one sentence?
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. I really
Yeah.
love what you said. But let me also say, it's not telling your mind, don't think about it. I know you know that, but
Yeah.
because that actually perpetuates the whole problem. It's like saying, Ben, don't look at the woman in white. And of course, you turn around and look at her. I told you not to look at her. But it's what you said was perfect. What you do is you do something that you love to do, or something very different, or something physical, or something that satisfies your heart, so that your attention goes on something else and you're not obsessing about the decision. And that creates a pause. And that's a very wise suggestion.
And it's
Yes.
an integration, because an integration is
Yes.
happening. We're creating all of these new connections in our mind as we go through this process, right? We need to give it some space to settle in, to integrate, for all the dots to connect in our mind. And that doesn't involve any conscious thought. It's just allowing the intelligence of our minds to do its thing.
Correct.
All
Well,
right. Well, I
I
thought
think
this
we
was
arrived
a
at a good place.
well, this was a really enjoyable episode for me. I learned quite a bit on this episode, Mitra, and it helped solidify some things for me. These were some ideas that I've had before, but I didn't have them in a framework. So this was really helpful, and I hope for you, the audience, that it was helpful for you as well. Mitra, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, just know it's human experience to have doubts and work with uncertainty. That's all.
Amen to that. And until next time, we wish you all a beautiful week. Thank you so much for tuning in today. For a list of the links and other resources referenced in this episode, check out the podcast description.
If you're benefiting from our podcast, we'd love if you could help us reach more people by subscribing. Your support means the world to us. From our hearts to yours, we thank you.